weekend at Indy in Iowa. We got a preview, of course, of IRP. We got the race that's going to be going on at the go-karting place. We're going to go over that too. Lots of fun things to go over. I'm going to do my short little intro to the show, and then we'll just get right into it, guys, because that's what we do here. I don't like to do a super long intro, just like to get right into the action as you guys, may like. So anyway, of course, follow me on social media at Start and Park Car for all Start and Park fun. I like to post old school Start and Park pictures, Start and Park facts, promote little videos about my YouTube channel and try to report some daily low budget tier side NASCAR news. Like and subscribe to my channel. We just hit 367 subs. Still waiting to get to that 400 subscriber giveaway that I'm hopeful to get there eventually, which then will lead to our 500 subscriber giveaway. So if you guys want to get into that, if you guys want some stuff from my personal collection, like and subscribe to the video. It's that simple. Follow my friends on social media, NASCAR Man, Brockbeard, the racing experts. All of those guys, they help make this possible. So please give them just as much support. Those guys are my second family, my racing family, and they mean a lot to me. So anyway, guys, let's get right into it. We had Pocono. Now, normally you guys would think with a track like Pocono, 2.5 miles in length, and, not some very big field sizes, that sometimes these ARCA races would probably be pretty boring. And sometimes they can be, but lately, the last couple years, the ARCA race at Pocono has put on a heck of a show. And this year was no different, and they didn't even complete the race. We had a lot of crashes, a lot of backmarkers really struggled in this race. And, for people like me who are full supporters of the backmarkers, this was a rough race to watch. I didn't even watch it live because I was in Iowa. I had to watch it back. But seeing all the live updates we got from supporters who were at the track and from at the track updates, it really broke my heart seeing a lot of those backmarkers struggle, and some of them who are really close friends of mine having to go through all that trouble just to, get wrecked. In terms of that, we also had that action was heated up front. The JGR 81 car was not going for, was not as competitive as we thought it would be. Personally, I thought he was going to go 3 for 3. And then we ended up with a winner that I would say not a lot of people expected. And I'm really curious if they're actually going to run him full-time in ARCA. We'll discuss that later in the show, but really curious if they're going to keep him in ARCA next year, or will they finally bring him up to full-time truck with maybe still a part-time ARCA program. Of course, we got IRP to discuss. Decent-sized field, bigger than the last couple of years, which is always good to see. Some other fun events, and we also got some news to go over, and a lot more. So let's get right into Pocono, guys. We had I thought it was 29 car entry list, but unfortunately it was only 28, of course, with the 27 withdrawing. Still, guys, 28 cars. Think about this. We have 28 in 2022. In 2019, before the pandemic, we only had 18. So it's definitely been an improvement. The 36 withdrew. Thanks to the person in the chat, that was the other car that withdrew from the field. That was Ryan Huff's effort. That was supposed to be with his own family operation. They unfortunately could not make it out to the race, which sucks. Because although that car wasn't a winning car, definitely a mid-tier, top 15 type car, kind of like basically he about runs where Greg Van Alst runs. That's kind of where I put his team at. So we had 28 cars, lots of rookies in the field, a couple of ringers in the field. We had Brandon Jones from the Xfinity Series. We had Chris Wright from the Truck Series. Come down to get some extra track time because Pocono is that track where if you are going to the first time, I would definitely agree that extra track time is very beneficial for breaking points, shifting points. And overall, I would say the track itself is just fun to run. I've heard a lot of people say that Pocono is kind of a boring track to watch, but I would not disagree to the people who say that Pocono is a really fun track to drive, considering that all three corners really are completely different. So I can understand that aspect. Practice. They actually had a Thursday test practice session that was optional to people who wanted to do it. Then they had another one on Friday. Qualifying was rained out. I believe this was actually supposed to be a separate practice and qualifying. I don't think it was at the same time. So I don't remember if they went off practice results. We're going to look here in a second. Sammy Smith was the quickest. Taylor Gray was second. My pick for the race, Jesse Love, was third. Raja Caruth was fourth, and Nick Sanchez was fifth. Surprisingly, Brandon Jones all the way down in sixth, over a second off of the 18's pace. That personally shocked me because I figured Brandon Jones would probably be up there where the 18 is, being a second ahead of the field. Some other notables that struggled were Parker Chase down in 12th, Greg Van Alst down in 13th. And I will say I was surprised at a little bit of lack of speed from Sean Corr all the way down in 17th. But again, the Empire Group hasn't been spectacular this season. That was kind of expected. The last remaining drivers at the bottom of the field, D.L. Wilson was last, Alex Clubb was 27th, Brad was 26th, and Zachary Tinkle was 25th. The starting parks in this race, I didn't think there was going to personally be that many. I predicted maybe a couple, but turns out almost everyone actually tried to run the full race, and there were relatively no starting parks, which is something we all like to see. The only one that may have been a starting park was the 12 of D.L. Wilson. But I don't believe that he was a starting park because usually when DL runs the 12, that is a full race effort car. Usually the car that starting parks in the Andy Hillenberg fleet is the starting park, but Stephanie Moyer was actually supposed to be a full race car this weekend. So yeah, they started the race by the practice charts, I believe. So Sammy Smith was on the pole, which definitely gave them the advantage because, like I said, my pick for the pole was the 81 of Jones. Could he have went past her in qualifying? Probably. Maybe he just wasn't pushing that hard in practice. We'll never know. But anyway, the race started, and, we give Fox a lot of crap, but this to me is unacceptable. The very first lap, going into turn one, if you watch it back, for you guys who watch the race, you can clearly see at the bottom of the screen, the 57 of Brian Dowsett gets spun. I don't know if he spun himself or he got turned by someone, but you can very clearly see him spinning. And all the Fox commentators seem to miss it. To me, that is just unacceptable. You could clearly see it at the screen. Actually, if you looked outside the track, you could see it. So what that tells me, were they actually looking outside of the booth, out the windows, or were they just watching their monitors? Because if you were watching the track, you would have seen a car spinning. And then all of a sudden, 15 seconds later, they finally show the 57. They finally show the 57 getting going again. They say, oh, he has an issue. Yeah, because he spun. If you guys were paying attention, you guys would have seen that. I mean, I understand Fox gives these digs, and I try to defend at any time, because maybe, they're just missing this, they're missing that. But I rewatched the footage like 3 or 4 times. Maybe they would have missed it. If you were focusing on that monitor hard enough, you would have seen it. Go back and watch the start. You will see the 57 spin. To me, that's just a little unacceptable. And I hated that for Brian Dowsett because he is one of my favorite underdogs. And I also hate the fact that even though he may have not made the show, I do hate it for Norm Benning and Brian Dowsett. They didn't even get a chance to hit the track, as both truck practice and qualifying was rained out. So that sucks when you pay the entry fee for tires, and neither of those two guys got to even make a lap, especially considering Pocono is Norm's home track, and FDNY likes to run the Pocono race itself. So that sucked for Brian Dowsett that he spun early. Alex Clubb, he's a good friend of mine. He's a very hardworking man. They got a good car. They just don't have any luck to finish races, unfortunately. The blue and black car, which ironically enough is nicknamed Nightmare, really has been a nightmare this season for that team. Was not a start and park effort. I talked to Alex. He does not want to do a start and park ever. He never wants to ever have to do it ever again. And unfortunately, they did run over something posted to the Club Racing Facebook page. Posted saying, if we didn't have any bad luck, we wouldn't have any. Knocked a pinhole in the oil cooler off some debris, apparently off track. So that was the reason why the 03 of Club went out so early. That was not a start and park. They had a legit something go through the oil. Luckily, the motor was salvageable because that isn't Ilmore's. That's a very expensive motor under that hood. Alex does not run legacy motors. So that did suck to see Alex go out so early because that was a full race effort, and they're really trying to gain in the owner points. Brian Dowsett would actually follow it on the very same lap with a radiator issue. So that leads me to believe maybe on his spin, he must have run over some debris, or maybe the debris that the 03 hit, the 57 hit that exact same piece. Either way, it knocked out 2 cars within 8 laps, but neither of them were starting parks. So that sucks to see. Meanwhile, though, up front, Taylor Gray was just kind of put a hurting on the field, and that kind of happens. We've seen that before at the Pocono races. You know, if the leader can just survive the restart in turn 1 and hold it through the tunnel turn, they will start to build a huge gap, and that's kind of what happened. Obviously, there were some battles within midfield. The Rev cars were taking it to the JGR entry. Daniel Dye was also up there. Connor Mosek was up there. Jake Finch was up there. They were kind of the main competitive cars in this group. Then you had the 02, the 97, the 73, and the 42 that I would say, and the 15 that, you know, they weren't going to win the race, but they were going to get a top 10 finish. And that's kind of how it was classified in ARCA. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on this. You got your winning cars, you got your cars that are going to get a top 10 finish, then you got your mid-pack cars, and then you got your stragglers, and then starting parks. That's kind of how I've done ARCA my whole life. And if you really look at the field, like back in the days when we had 40-car fields, that's kind of how it was. You know, you had your winners, top 10 cars, mid-pack cars, stragglers, and then starting parks. It's still that today, just more condensed. So yeah, Taylor Gray was still putting a hurting on the field. There were multiple battles, great battles for second place with the other Venerini cars, the Rev cars, and the JGR entry. They were swapping second all over the place. We'll say I did expect more speed out of the 55 of Jake Finch. It shouldn't shock me, though. I guess since it is the part-time entry, the 55 car, maybe they're not putting as much effort into that car as I thought they would be, because anytime Tom Hezer got behind the wheel, he was my pick to win. And I'll admit he really didn't do as well as I thought he would, which leads me to believe that that 55 is probably not as fresh as you say, like the motor, maybe the parts, maybe isn't just as good as you'd say the 20 cars, because I do believe the 20 car is the main car for the Venerini organization, with the 15 in second, the 25 in third, of course, and then the 55 in fourth. So yeah, all is well, that continuing the same lead. And then unfortunately, one of the Andy Hillenberg cars, the 11 of Bryce Houchberg, hit the wall in turn 2. Car was not totaled. What did get quite a bit of damage. Looking at closer inspections, it actually looked like the car that the Houchbergs actually owned. It didn't look like one of Andy's cars. I believe the Toyota that he was driving was actually owned by the Bryce Houchberg team, because I believe they ran that car at Daytona and Talladega. Normally, Bryce runs the black, red, and white Chevy, but he didn't run that this weekend. So it leads me to believe that that was Bryce's own car. So I hope it was not that badly damaged and that they can get it. Repaired and hopefully be at Speed Weeks next season. So they came back from that break. Taylor Gray once again got a huge jump on the field, pulled away to a decent lead. Jesse Love at this point was fighting with Brandon Jones for second. It was just like Brandon Jones just for some reason didn't have that winning speed in it. The car didn't launch very good, was not very good on restarts. His car looked to be a long-run car. But the problem was this was only a 80 lap race, not 60, 80 lap race. So, and with all these cautions, it took a long time for that car to come in. And by the time, it would start to come in, the caution would come out for an on-track incident or a stage break. So that would kind of sucked for Brandon Jones. He really never got the chance to go because his car just, I feel like, was not set up properly. Unfortunately, though, and then after that, we had just a couple laps later, in my opinion, one of the most heartbreaking moments. If you guys, I don't know if you guys can really relate to this. For my standards, it is heartbreaking. The 06 Wayne Peterson racing machine, driven by Zachary Tinkle, collided with the 01 of Stephanie Moyer. Now, I got friends on Fast Track's team who say it was Zachary's fault. I got friends on Zachary's team who say it was the 01's fault. I just call it a mistimed communication, maybe going into turn 1. It happens. But unfortunately, they made contact. The 06 just, man, your heart just melts when you see it hit the wall like that. Car was pretty badly damaged. Zachary did post updates saying that they don't think it's total. They don't think the frame is bent. Looks to be just some serious suspension damage and, of course, cosmetic damage. The body is going to definitely need a new body, which does beg the question, they had just bought owner points, and will they be around the rest of the season? You know, as we know, back at Nashville, the Ford got some pretty serious damage done to it as well. Now, if you guys haven't really been in the ARCA news lately, I was going to make this its own video, and I might do that again to really explain how all this works. But I'll go over it briefly, and I might actually make a video about this tomorrow, really explaining all of it. But the Richmond racing team is not doing very well right now, unfortunately. And it looks like that they have scaled back their organization. The 06 has taken over the 27's owners points, which puts Wayne up to 16th, actually 15th in the points. The 0 entry for Peterson will now take over the 06's points, putting the 0 entry into 23rd, and the 27 will now be at the 0's points down in 40th. Now, I was told by Zachary the 0 might run some races, but there's nothing to confirm about that yet. And judging by what happened over the weekend, he told me that before Pocono. With this car being severely hurt, I highly doubt we see the 0 now. But we did get updates from Zachary last week that the Ford was being repaired fairly well. The repairs were coming along very nicely, and the Ford will, even though I was told will not return until next season, it might actually end up returning this season. And another funny twist is, turns out the car that they are going to be running this weekend, they are going to be running this weekend. Don't think the 06 is going to withdraw, and they're not going to start in park. The 06 is running this weekend in a car from the Richmonds. I believe it's a car that Wayne actually owned and bought back. I can't confirm that 100%. But in essence, Zachary Tinkle will be running Tim Richmond's car as they were supposed to be at this race. I really hope they do show up, and they are committed to running whole races. But man, it really does break your heart seeing the 06. You know, they've just tried so hard, and it goes to show you, man. You look at Wayne. You know, he's trying, he's scraping by, and they still have a lot of bad luck, and it sucks to see, man. A lot of people think, Wayne just runs around 15 seconds off the pace and collects $1,000. If you look over the history of ARCA, Wayne Peterson's cars have really taken a hit. There have been quite a few crashes where the Peterson entries have gotten their cars really torn up. But, yeah, they will be running a car from Tim Richmond. I don't know if it's the red Toyota. I know the Tims have a couple of cars, but it might actually be the red Toyota. I'm not for sure about that. But they will be there this weekend. The Ford, like I said, is coming back together. The Chevrolet, unfortunately, that might be done for the season at this point. Especially with, the season being halfway done, I would just put the Chevrolet, honestly, back in the shop and try to focus maybe on the Toyota and get the Ford back as well. Because I know they would like to get the 0 out there to try to get into that top 20 bonus to get the little owner's bonus at the end of the year. So that was heartbreaking to see the 06 crash. After that, we ran 5 more laps, finally had a lead change on the lap 25 restart. Nick Sanchez was able to get the lead from Taylor Gray. A very impressive mood. He was actually my dark horse pick for the weekend. He held the lead for 7 laps up to the competition yellow. I believe we were supposed to have 2 comp yellows at lap 30 and lap 60. But yeah, we had the comp yellow. The free pass on lap 13 was the 44 of Ed Pompa. The free pass on the 06's caution was the 10 of John Garrett. And the free pass here on the comp yellow was the 73 of Andy Jankowiak. Forgot to give those updates. So they came back from the comp yellow. Sanchez did lead the first lap back on the restart. Then Jesse Love took the lead. He would hold it for 6 laps. Again, they were really trading the lead here. It was amazing to see just how different these cars are. And, man, we don't really see it with the Cup cars anymore. You talk about skewed out. Did you guys see Raja's car? I mean, his right front tire was practically sticking out of the car. That thing was so skewed. I love to see it. I love the creativity that these ARCA teams are still doing, despite, where the Cup cars are at and the Xfinity cars are at, with the more strict rules of what you can do to the car. You look at these ARCA cars, man, how trimmed out they are, how skewed they are. I love it. I like the fact that this series, ARCA, even though it's owned by NASCAR, this series still allows you to be so creative. So, you really ask yourself, why do people still run in the series? It really is for reasons like that. You can run a fast car at all these different types of tracks with a unique setup. You can't do that in late models. If anything, some late model circuits are really more strict than NASCAR because they try to make every car exactly the same. But yeah, continuing on, Jesse Love held the lead till lap 38. Then we had coming back from the comp yellow, Connor Mosek had taken the lead. Again, not a car that was really going to win the race, but valiant effort to try to still get some track position. He held the lead for 4 laps. Nick Sanchez got the lead again. Unfortunately, we had another caution, the 15 of Parker Chase. He was stopped in turn 2. Parker's really had a rough go this season, honestly, in my opinion, for Venturini. Other than his second place finish at Daytona, I can't really see him doing anything impressive. Anything but just a bunch of crashes or disappointing finishes. Really hasn't been the season I know that he wants, as he's trying to make a name for himself, trying to get some rides lined up for next season as well. As far as I know right now, though, Parker doesn't really have anything set up yet for next year, but of course, if he does, we'll announce that. Kind of interesting, though, at this point, the 17 of Taylor Gray was a lap down. I don't remember if it was for a penalty or not in the race, but either way, he was a lap down, so this caution was very timely, as he did get back on the lead lap and clearly had a car to win this race. So yeah, Sanchez was still leading at this point with lap 45. Caution came out. They ran 4 laps. They took the green flag again, and just immediately chaos ensued on the backstretch. I couldn't see quite what happened, but either way, just some horrible hits for the 44. He had a lot of damage, but the 30 and the 73 and the 8, massive damage, just massive, massive damage. It really is shocking sometimes how damaged these ARCA cars can get. Don't remember really what started the crash, but they crashed coming off of turn 2. You could call it the ARCA big one. Quite a few cars were involved. The 30 of Amber Balkan, the 97 of Jason Kitzmiller, the 8 of Sean Core, the 73 of Andy Jankowiak, and the 44 of Ed Pompa. They were all involved. The 30, the 8, and the 70 sustained the most damage. Amber Balkans really had a rough summer. After a pretty decent start to her season, the 30 team has really had a rough summer. A lot of it not really Amber's fault, but definitely some crashes that I think she does need to work on. Again, I still see the potential, but I will say so far, definitely Tony is having the better season flat out than Amber right now, when I really do believe a lot of people picked Amber to have the better season between the two ladies. So, I mean, definitely right now, I think it's just based off Tony hasn't really wrecked. I can't remember her wrecking this season at all, other than the Talladega practice crash. I mean, yeah, you could make the point that Amber has been faster. In terms of on-track speed, yeah, she's probably been faster. But at the end of the day, a lot of owners will look at, well, you get a lot of exposure and you're consistent. You also crash a lot. I mean, it goes both ways. So, but I would say personally, from my standpoint, that Tony has had the better season than Amber. Some people may look at the other way, but that's how I see it right now. So yeah, huge crashed. They red flagged the race, which was a good move because this was going to take a while. It really sucks seeing this happen to Andy Jankowiak. I believe this was the first race with the new Toyota. And that car was really heavily damaged. Empire Racing, that team, I thought that team was dead. They really are just on a shoestring budget at this point. They're not doing very well financially. They usually try to come out to this race every year. Pocono has been one of the races that Sean likes to run. And it just sucks to see this happen to them. I don't know. This could be it for them. I hope it's not. but I don't know how much money the Empires have left because this car is killed. I mean, the 8 car is pretty killed. And then, of course, the 30 of Amber Balkan, that team, they got plenty of money. That'll be repaired. Just sucks to see because Mark Rhett's team, they've struggled this season with Amber, and, they're just trying to get by and be as competitive as possible. But clearly the luck has not been on their side. Suck to see Ed Pampa involved. Ed always likes to see likes to come out, always like to see Ed run. He usually does a fairly decent job. This was a 44 entry. It was a Hillenberg entry with Jeff McClure, who runs a lot of the E Series and lower tier divisions, usually runs the super speedways, but has teamed up with Andy Hillenberg to help field entries this season. Car wasn't badly hurt. It actually, from pictures, it looks like they're just going to need some cosmetic damage to the right side, but the car doesn't actually look that badly hurt at all. And that's kind of good because I always hate seeing bad things happen to Andy. I never want to see any of his cars get injured, but it was a rough race for fast track racing. They had quite a few crash cars in this race. But yeah, they got the mess all cleaned up, ran a few more caution laps. And at this point, it was becoming that, well, we might not get the whole 80 laps in. There was a lot of rain in Pocono on Friday, and unfortunately, it pushed the start of the race pretty far back. And we had gotten to the point with all the cautions, the race might not get over that early because of darkness coming. Now, of course, Pocono doesn't have lights. Thank God it doesn't have lights. How much it would cost to put lights around a 2.5-mile track? Holy crap, I cannot imagine how much that would cost. But yeah, it was basically, it was kind of like the same rule as Talladega, only they had different kind of time constraints where they're going to throw the green flag, and if we make it to the checkered flag, we make it to the checkered flag. But if there's a caution that comes out, that's probably going to be it. And unfortunately, that did happen. We'll get to that in a second. So they got back on the restart. Connor Mosek did get back in the lead for one lap. Jesse Love, my pick, even led a lap or two. But then Taylor Gray was able to get by, and he would just once again check out on the field. 6 laps later on lap 62, my pick, Jesse Love, would actually spin in turn 3. Not really sure what the cause for the accident was, but literally under the caution flag, it was announced that the race would end. And coming up at turn 4 on lap 64, Taylor Gray, 2 for 2, would get the checkered flag, and he was the winner of the General Tire Delivers 200 at Pocono. I understand the frustration because did it look light enough out to still run laps? Yes. But when you look at actual track pictures, you're pushing it. This is a 2.5-mile, very high-speed track. You don't want to run in darkness. I hate it that it was cut early, but I understand it from a safety standpoint. At a track this fast, it was getting dark. Because sometimes those cameras can make it look a lot lighter than it actually is. But I saw from a lot of friends who were at that race, that ARCA race, it was getting dark. It was getting to the point where the spotters, unless you had a bright car, like Brad Smith's car, like a Taylor Gray's car, they really couldn't see him on the backstretch. You just kind of tried to look around. So I don't blame them for ending the race. I hate that they had to, but it was understandable. So Taylor Gray goes 2 for 2. Nick Sanchez finishes second, not what Raja Caruth needed, as the 2 continues to shrink that points lead, little point. Brandon Jones, the 81, does not go 3 for 3. First, and now a third for Brandon Jones. Raja finishes 4th. Daniel Dye finishes 5th. So he unfortunately will lose a point to Raja in the point standings. Connor Mosek finishes 6th. Jake Finch was 7th. Chris Wright was 8th. Jason Kitzmiller got a nice top 10 finish. Tony Breidinger gets a top 10 finish. And probably one of my favorite moments, Scott Melton, returning after the Talladega crash, gets a solid 11th place finish. Couldn't be happier for the Kimmels. Always good to see. Sammy Smith, I don't really remember what happened to him, but he was a lap down. He would finish 12th, a lap down. If someone in the chat could explain to me what happened to him. So that was a shame to see that team do so poorly. Both the 18 and the 20, 12th and 13th, those are two of the front runners in the owner's standings right now. So that kind of sucked, but that battle is pretty much going to stay the same because with them finishing right next to each other, the 18 will still gain a point, but it definitely won't gain as much as it could have earlier in the race. John Garrett was 14th. Greg Van Alst, he was in a backup car. That's why he was running so poorly in the race. He was 15th. Bryce Hausberg was 16th. Brad Smith was able to survive the carnage and finish 17th. Parker Chase was 18th, and Stephanie Moyer was the last car running, finishing 19th. Overall, I would give the race a 6 to 7 out of 10. I think, if you didn't watch the race live, definitely watch the highlight reel. I think it's definitely worth an 8 to 10 minute watch. It was very entertaining. Again, I think the ARCA series really has put on a lot of banger races this season. I really can't say, other than the ARCA East races, which we all know were not really that exciting, but a main ARCA series race this season, I can't really say has been boring. I can't. And I think a lot of people can say the same thing. I don't really think ARCA has put on a bad race this season. Has it gotten boring at times? Absolutely. Absolutely. I can honestly agree that ARCA, but that's every series. We can all admit. Cup Series has gotten boring at some times. Truck and Xfinity, they've all gotten boring. If I had to pick the worst race of the season so far for ARCA, you could say Berlin. I've heard some people say Berlin. I've also heard some people say Phoenix. I don't really know the people who say Phoenix. That had a lot of interesting battles, so I don't really understand that aspect. I've heard some people also say Iowa, and again, I just don't understand your logic. That had a lot of comers and goers leaders. My front runner would be Berlin, mainly just because we had one guy dominate the whole thing and we had a small car count. And I really can't point that there either. Same with Elko. If I were to say that Elko and Berlin were the two most boring races of the season, and even then, they really weren't that bad. They weren't exactly, banger races, but they weren't bad. It just really, wasn't perfect. But I would easily say ARCA's definitely done a good job of getting a decent car count at every race for, what 2022 brings. And the racing has been very entertaining, which is something we all love to see. So looking in the point standings after this race, we're now over halfway through the season, 10 races in, 10 races to go. Raja Caruth is still your points leader, but by just 3 points. It's getting closer and closer, guys, every single race. Daniel Dye is unfortunately 9 points back, but still with 10 races to go, it's anyone's game. Tony Breidinger is in 4th, 64 points behind. Greg Van Alst is in 5th, 72 points behind. Amber Belkin is 6th, 88 points behind. Brad Smith is 7th, 136 points behind. And this is the one to see. Sammy Smith is in 8th, 171 points behind. Now, races like today will not help Sammy at all in the championship. And I honestly believe, we got John Schultzke in the chat. He actually works for Fast Track Racing. Good to see you, John. Races like this are not going to help Sammy in the championship. And I think we can finally put to rest at this point, Sammy will not win the championship. And I'm tired of people telling me that he still will. He won't. Will he win the Owners' Championship? Probably. Will he win the Sioux Chief Showdown Championship? Probably. The main series driver's title? No. He's just too far behind. You're not going to make that many points up, especially with runs like Pocono. You're not going to make that ground up that quickly. You're just not. Taylor Gray, he's only running about 10, 12 races. So Taylor Gray's in 9th. Jesse Love is down in 10th. D.L. Wilson is 11th. And Zachary Tinkle is in 12th. Parker Chase is in 13th. Connor Mosack is 14th. And Bryce Hausberg is 15th. But again, all of those guys from about 8th on back are part-time drivers. The Owners' Championship, like I said, definitely took a better swing. Billy Venturini, of course, still leads in the 20 car, but now just by 11 points over the Max Siegel 6 entry and 14 points over the Max Siegel 2 entry. The 18 Kyle Busch entry fell to 4th and is now 18 points behind. The 5th place Murray Gallagher entry is 20 points behind, and the 15 Bill Venerini entry is now 30. Those are the only cars that are in contention, as the 7 of Kathy Venerini entry is over 80 points behind. The top Hillenberg entry is still 10th with the 11 car. The 10 car is 11th, and the 12 car is, 12th. The Alex Club entry is 13th. Brad Smith is 14th. Wayne Peterson 06 is 15th. And the last full-time car is the 01 Hillenberg entry in 16th. David Gillen's 17 car is 17th. Stacy Holmes' 23 car is 18th. Billy Vennerini's 55 car is 19th. And Coy Gibbs's 81 car has moved into 20th, the coveted last spot for that owner's point bonus. The Ferrier McClure car is 21st, and the Kimmel Racing 69 car is 22nd, and the Peterson 0 entry is 23rd. Obviously, with 10 races left, the coveted 20th place spot is really where that team, that all those teams they want to be. They want to be in that coveted last place position in 20th, because I do believe, from what I've been told, that is where they pay out that bonus. But yeah, definitely lots of definite battles in this series. Obviously, the low budget guys trying to stay afloat in the point standings, and a lot of those part-time teams trying to sneak into that top 20. Our Sioux Chief Championship still has Sammy Smith leading. Taylor Gray did extend his lead. Not Taylor Gray, Sammy Smith. I'm sorry. Sammy Smith still holds the lead in the Sioux Chiefs Championship, but of course, Taylor Gray is still there. I'm not sure what the next race is for that specific championship, but I do believe we are halfway through the season of the Sioux Chiefs Showdown Championship as well. Shifting our focus now onto IRP, I'm glad to announce that we have a very, very solid entry list of cars. 24 cars by my count. And let me just say, I'm just so happy to hear that, considering, the last couple of races at IRP, we had struggled to get halfway decent fields. Some notable entries in the field that I went over. Colton Collins, CCM Racing is back. Colton Collins will be in the 7. Dallas Frueh will be in the 10. Bryce is back in the 11. DL still in the 12. Chandler Smith from the Truck Series will be in the 15. Christian Rose will continue a couple races in the 42. Tom Hezer is back in the 15. Mandy Chick will be in the 74. That is a former Visconti Motorsports entry. That team no longer, I believe, exists, and that car was purchased from that organization. From John Schultzke in the chat, driver change in the Chen will be Chris Martin Jr. So you heard that right here, folks. Chris Martin Jr. will be making, I believe that would have to be his first start, because I have no idea who Chris Martin Jr. is, but I hope he runs the whole race, and I hope he does a good job for Uncle Andy this weekend. Dylan Fetcho, I hope I pronounced that correctly. He'll be running for Mark Noble. They've been running on the East Circuit. Not Dylan, but the Noble Racing team has been running on the East Circuit. So good to see that team. A couple of new faces. Tim Monroe is in the 01, which obviously means it'll be a start and park entry. Alex Clubb in the 03. 06 of Zachary Tinkle, and Dylan Mamba Smith in the 02 for Young's Motorsports. How about that? Awesome to see one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. Mamba Smith making his debut. It's not necessarily a winning ride, but man, it's a competitive ride, and I'm eager to see how this guy does. I am so excited for Dylan Smith. He's running an old AJ Allmendinger livery from his Champ Car days. I'm like, what a paint scheme to choose. A Champ Car paint scheme from 2006 as your paint scheme for your ARCA debut. Now, that is creativity. So you get a 10 out of 10 just for that. A Champ Car paint scheme from 2006. I don't even know how many of us in the chat or who watch this show know what Champ Car was. I do, because I grew up in the last couple of years of the Champ Car circuit, but I love the fact that they picked that paint scheme, and I really hope he gets a top 10 finish. It's not a winning ride, but I really hope he gets a top 10 finish, runs all the laps, and has a great time, because it's people like him that can really get ARCA some good exposure, and I really hope he does a good job. I really hope he does. As for starting parks, like I said, guys, I'm not for sure. If John, if you're still watching, I think the 01 will probably be parking because Tim usually parks. I do believe the 11 will run the full race like he usually does, but will Chris Martin be running the whole distance, and will DL be running the whole distance? So will 3 of the 4 be running the whole distance, or will anyone else parking? Other than that, I really don't see anyone else parking. I could see Brad parking, mainly because since IRP is very, very rough on tires, Brad may not just have a set of tires that's good enough to run the whole race. And what I mean by that is, at these older tracks that really eat up the tires, keep in mind, Brad's still starting on used tires. So Brad might not run the full race simply because the tires just might not be able to hold up. I hope he does, but I can't guarantee that the 48 is going to run the whole race. So the 2 possible starting parks would be the 01 and possibly the 48. And if Brad is going to start and park, he'll try to run at least a quarter of the race or to the first stage break. The payouts for this race are as this. Of course, guys, I think one of the cool parts about the ARCA series, I really wish NASCAR would do it. I know why they don't, but I think it really adds some more fan interaction, is they literally list the entry blank. Fans, you can go online, you can fill them out yourself. It's a lot of fun. If you want to show your kids, you're like, hey, this is what all the drivers are earning. So, of course, with 24 cars in the field, 24th pays $1,000. It says the winning purse is $5,000. Second place is $3,000. Third place is $2,250. The prize money with all the contingency is met rewards is $19,625. Second place is $9,000, and third place is $5,600. Of course, with 24 cars there, the top 20 will get a $200 bonus from Flow Racing. So obviously, a lot of those lower budget teams will try their best to get into that top 20, because for them, every dollar counts. And sometimes that $200 it really goes a long way with a lot of those teams. Got a lot of interesting names, and you did hear me say during that entry list, Visconti. It was told to me by Zachary Tinkle, and I did put it out there on social media, that Visconti Motorsports has apparently suspended all operations, and they literally have sold everything. Mandy Chick Racing does own one of their cars. How you know it's a Visconti? It has the 74 font, and it still has Donald Teage's name written on the back. So that was a full-on Visconti car. It's a good car. I mean, it's not even a bad car. It's not a piece of junk car. Visconti had decent equipment. Could have probably just been a financial issue, because remember, guys, I reported it earlier this season. Visconti came into this season not without a full-time driver. They didn't have one. They had Donald Teach for the first couple of races, but that was about it. Donald came back for one more race, and it looks like that was probably it. I hate it, because I think the Visconti Motorsports team really could have been something, but with that almighty dollar just not there, they just didn't have the funding, unfortunately. Well, like I said, I think with the lack of starting parks, a strong, probably 20 cars really out there being competitive, I think it's going to definitely put on a good show. IRP just always puts on a good show. I'm really glad ARCA still comes to track like these. Glad the Truck Series is coming back. All we need is for the Xfinity Series to come back. Get the Xfinity Series away from the Indy Road Course and bring them over to IRP. I have no idea why the Xfinity Series is running the Indy Road Course and not IRP. Indy is what it is. But if you want to sell out IRP, bring back the Xfinity Series. I don't know why they left to begin with. I was there at the last, kind of a fun fact. I won a trip to Indianapolis in 2010. I was there at one of the last races. That place was sold out back when it was called O'Reilly Raceway Park. I really wish the Xfinity Series would go back to IRP. It would be such a more entertaining race. Yeah, I forgot to mention, too, from Sir Ralkstein, on Mandy Chick Racing will also be running Milwaukee, Salem, and the season finale at Toledo as well. So that's good to see. It's always good to see more part-time teams coming into the sport. It's kind of how ARCA is nowadays. We don't really see many new full-time teams come into the sport, more part-time teams. But, hey, I'm just glad. I'd rather be gaining teams than losing teams because lately, in ARCA, we've just seemed to be losing teams. But I'm glad we're getting back up there because I want to see these car counts get better, especially after we saw some pretty disappointing ones the last couple of years. In terms of race picks, Rev has really struggled at these kinds of tracks, so I'm not going to pick a Rev entry. I'm actually going to go with Chandler Smith. I think the Ringer is going to get it done this weekend. I'm going to go with Chandler Smith as my overall pick for the race. My underdog pick, I'm going to go with Tom Hezert. I picked him almost every time he's raced, but those are my two picks for this race. I do definitely think it's going to be an entertaining race. I'm not sure if I'm going to see it live. We do have a local fair from where I'm from. We have a local fair going on, and I'm probably going to go attend that with my family. So I'm not sure I'll be able to do live race updates. I will try, but yeah, so I will definitely try my best to see the race live at least. Is this one on Flow Racing, or is this going to be an FS1 broadcast? Didn't quite remember that. I'm looking up on the entry blank. Yes, it will be on FS1. So that's good. I'm glad a race like this is getting some good exposure because this is one of the more entertaining races this season. I will really be shocked if this race is not entertaining. Even back in 2020 during the pandemic, this race still provided an entertaining race. In terms of that, I'm not sure what you guys pick. We got a couple people picking Taylor Gray. Obviously, I don't blame you. I wouldn't shock me if Taylor Gray goes 3 for 3. It's kind of shocking that team's managing to run without sufficient sponsorship, but I guess they got, full Ford performance sponsorship. More people are going with Tyler. I'm still going with Chandler because I think, Chandler, he's been there before. He's won there. Chandler, I believe he won the last race back in 2020. So that's why I'm going with Chandler. I think he's going to win. Obviously, guys, it's going to be before the truck race. It's actually going to be fairly early in the day, 6 p.m. Eastern. So Friday at 5 o'clock. So for the people who do work late jobs on Friday, you're going to have to definitely probably record this or get it up going as quick as you can because the truck race is later on Friday night as well. I'm very excited for this race. I'm not going to lie, guys. I told you I'm very excited for this race. And yeah, definitely look forward to there. That kind of wraps up the ARCA portion. I do want to touch briefly on a couple of things. I did do my first media gig this weekend in Iowa Speedway for IndyCar. And man, I tell you, you compare the atmosphere of going there for an ARCA race when there's only about 4,000 or 5,000 people there to an IndyCar race when there's about 35,000 to 40,000 people there. It's quite unbelievable. Doing the media center gigs. I got to interview Jimmy Johnson and Ed Carpenter and Stingray Robb. All those interviews are up on my channel. If you guys want to check those out, uploaded a couple of little videos from there too. Like I said, it was just a weekend to remember. I'm eager to do more of these gigs. Obviously, I enjoy the crewman gig more. I'm planning to do the Knoxville Nationals. Don't have anything confirmed for that yet. In terms of my final race for the season, I do have to sadly announce that I'm only doing one more race this season of at the track workmanship and media, and that will be the Fall Kansas event. Not in October this year. It'll be in September. So, yeah, little touch on that. Little touch on the personal life of Colby. Like I said, guys, to wrap this up, we are at 367. More appreciation for liking and subscribing for the channel, guys. Giveaways at both 400 and 500 from my personal collection. We got some more fun little content videos coming out for you guys soon. I really hope you guys will enjoy those. Keep the support up for this podcast. It's a lot of fun coming on here and talking ARCA because, not many people do come on here and talk ARCA. And again, guys, every episode, I want to thank you guys because, I just thought of this idea one day and it really makes me happy to see where it's grown. It's great that we have some core listeners who are here for every episode. And, if you're still watching this and you're new, welcome, man. We're very fun. There's no hate here at all. We just love talking ARCA because I feel like it's a series that deserves more support. And I've been a supporter of this series since I was 6, and I always will be. So that will definitely wrap up this week's portion of the ARCA Racing podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Watch the ARCA race this Friday. Please, I'm telling you, you will not want to miss this one. This is going to be one of the must-see events because IRP always puts on a banger race. I've been Colby Evans, starting Park Car, signing off, and we'll see y'all real soon. Maybe tomorrow with another video, maybe with another couple of content videos, or maybe we'll just have to wait till next Wednesday when we do another podcast. Either way, I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Have a good Wednesday night. So long, guys.